Welcome back to King's Custom Garage, and in this episode we're going to start getting all the metal work done on the fenders as far as rust, any dents, anything like that. We're going to get all that addressed and hopefully get that took care of. Stay tuned, hope you enjoy. Alright, so I'm going to start out with this little spot here where the running board mounts. I don't know how well you can see it, but if I stick my hand back there, so this spot right here, that's supposed to be the bolt hole for where the running board bolts, and then all this is just tore up and stuff from where the running board was welded to the fender. So I'm going to start out by making a panel for this one, and we're going to do this one different than we done like the rocker. On this one I think I'm going to do a cut and butt. So I'm going to start with just a little piece. It's roughly the size that it needs to be, maybe a little bit bigger. I've come in before, this was split, starting to split and crack right here. I come in, opened it up and cleaned it up a little bit and just tack welded it so it wasn't flopping and trying to continue to break. But we're going to get this panel done, and I'm going to show you how I'll get it bent up and matched to the best that I can. And then we'll come back in, mark us a couple lines just for reference, and I think I'm going to try and drill a hole in this piece once I get it the contour and get it bent right. I'm going to try and mark it as close as I can. This hole's been stretched out, but if I can get it somewhat close enough that I can get a hole in this and I can bolt this on there using that hole, then I can just come back, cut 3 edges or so and start working it in, getting it matched up with the fender and weld it in. So I'm gonna show you how I'll get this bent up, and then we'll get it put in there, hopefully. So I'm going to start out by just giving it a little bit of a bend with my fingers and my hands, see what I can't do. One end will probably have to have more of a bend to it just to match the fender. That's just, that right there is just by hand. So I'm going to take one end, we'll say this end, and I'm going to put a little bit more bend toward this outer end here, because I think it needs to roll some more just to match up to the fender. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to get that. I'll just take any hammer will work, but I'm going to use this ball peen. See how this end's more flat? This one kind of continues and carries the curve. So we're going to take it back over and we'll see how it matches up. Pretty close already. I'm going to take and flatten just a little bit of this right here. See, it's a little more flat now than it was. And that flat section will be up here for where the bolt hole is. That's about right there. This is sticking out, so it's got it bound up. I'll move it over. I'm just seeing if it matches the contour. That's it's pretty close to right there. So I'm gonna go with that. That'll be close enough. I'm not going for perfect. It'll be better than what's there. Then I'll show you on this back side here. Let me get you off the camera stand. There's actually another little piece that comes in behind where that bolt hole is for the running board. There's another piece put on the back side here just for extra support and stability, I would assume. The top section of it's all tore up and whatnot, so I'll probably leave the majority of it down here toward the bottom lip of the fender. I'll come in here and cut whatever I cut out, and then whenever I go and put back in after I get this outer skin put on, I'll come and I'll make me just another small piece that'll go around that hole, maybe even a little bit bigger than what was already there, and I'll just weld it in, spot weld it, weld the edges in a couple spots, and get it back on there. That way it has that extra stability for that bolt hole, and it'll probably end up being thicker than what it was already, the thickness that it already was, so it may work out a little bit better, I'm hoping. I'm going to come in here now, and I'm just going to lay my piece over as best as I can for now. I'm coming in here, I'm going to trace it. And it don't have to be perfect. We don't really need the lines, because once, if it works out with putting the bolt through it with that hole for mounting running boards, we won't really need the lines. I mean, you could always clean up, you can mark it like this here. And when you pull this off, see, this weld is what's messing this up right here, but like I said, it don't have to be perfect. You could come back in here and you could clean all your edges with a grinder or whatever, however you wanted to. And you just go ahead, after you had it all ground up and your edges cleaned up, you could lay your panel back up here, tack weld it in a couple spots so it'll hold it. And then you can come back through and start cutting the edges of your panel and get this to lay in, and then start actually welding it into place. And then come back through, and wherever you had it tack welded, cut those welds as you cut it for it to lay into place. That's probably what I'm going to do, but instead of tack welding it into place, I'm going to mark that hole and drill that hole out, and then we'll use the hole and bolt it together, and we'll use that as the tack weld. That way, hopefully, that hole will be in the right spot for our running board. It shouldn't have moved. So I'm going to come to this side, put our panel up here, get it lined up. See if I can bend this out of the way some. Here. So see if I can get that to flatten out a little bit. that's much better. That'll give us our hole a little bit better. It might not be perfect, but we should be able to get it close enough. Our hole wasn't transferring as much of a hole. Still not going to be perfect. Maybe that'll work. So I'm going to get a hole drilled in this real quick. Alright. I got our hole drilled. So let's see if this is going to work. That should work. Oh, our nut fell off the back. We crimped it down too far. There it is. I think that's how I'm gonna do it. And I'll come in, cut this side, cut the top, cut both of those so far, or cut the top and then cut down so far each side, and then just start getting it pushed in, push it back. I've got some clamps. We'll just clamp it so it's level, or flush, I'm sorry, and then start. All right, so I've gotten the both the front fenders and both of the running boards are pretty well done. I've got a little bit of grinding left to do, I know, on the driver's side fender, and I still need to go back and touch up just a few pinholes in that fender for sure. I think everything else should be pretty good. There may be just a few small pinholes here or there, but when I go back and when I go back and spray, you know, primer or whatever, and I'm going to do a good rust preventative or a undercoating on the back side. So when I go back and do that, I'll check everything real good with a flashlight. If there's a pinhole, I'll weld it up real quick and grind it. I'm just trying to get everything pretty well took care of. That way we can go ahead and start getting the bed figured out, and I want to get the rear fenders figured out before I start getting the bed figured out, so I've got everything in line and the wheelbase is set right. I want the front and rear wheels both to be centered in the wheel well. So if I've got to adjust the bed or the fenders to make it centered, that's what I'm going to do. So I'll show you what I've gotten done, and then I'm going to probably get started on the rear fenders. Those are the two that I've got left, and then once those are done, I can get the running boards mounted and see if they're setting too high, if they're setting where they need to be. It's kind of hard to tell with the areas where the running boards mount missing and messed up. It's kind of hard to just eyeball and see, and I don't have to weld them back up there just to see if they're setting where they need to. So I figured we go ahead, fix what we needed to so we could mount them somewhat, even if it's just a couple bolts in each to hold it there. It'll give us a better idea. All right, so this is the driver's side fender. We've got it all took care of. Like I said, I know for sure it still needs some grinding done. Right down here is where all of the that one area was that was rusted out. We got it took care of and ground up. I've still got to do the grinding on the bottom side here. I ended up finding some pinholes of rust right through here, and I didn't make a panel, so what I ended up doing was I just took and welded the holes. I did end up burning through a few times, but hey, it's fine. It's not a big deal. This section here was pretty rough and bent and bowed up and kicked in, if you remember. Had a pretty good dent up in here. We got this dent up here that was in here. We got it knocked out for the most part. I'm not going for perfect. I'm just going for better than what it was. We're not sure if we're going to do kind of a rough patina style. We like the idea of patina, but then again, I'd like to give it a nice paint job. So we're not sure what we're going to do yet. So I'm trying to somewhat, as I go, get it to where, you know, if something's kind of rough, we can at least get it better than what it was, and then maybe, you know, use a little bit of plastic filler and do a skim coat of plastic filler over the whole thing, and do a nice paint job. So if I take care of the majority of the rough dents and rough areas on the body panels now, that'll be less work I have to deal with later, and it's just going to make the whole process easier. So I'm still not sure. We're talking back and forth, figuring out if we want to leave it like this or if we want to do nice paint. But this fender's pretty good. I need to go back around this wheel lip area real good. There's a crack up here that I didn't see until after I was done, and right here starting. And there's one here that I did know about, and one right in here that I somewhat started messing with. But this whole area needs a little bit of work. It needs to be beat in right here some and rolled back in, and that's probably what this is from. So I'm going to do a little bit more work on this area, probably not in this video, but I'll mess with it later on. I may not even video it, but you can see how the wheel lip, it pooches out down here. It's not sitting right. So we'll take care of that later. Then this fender, we got it took care of. We got the eyebrow area underneath and above took care of. There was also some rust spots down there coming through that I welded them up, same as the other one. And then the running boards, both of them are took care of. The worst part on them were the ends where they mounted, and most of it was it looked like they had been welded on numerous times. The far ends, these were split and broke coming back, working back this way, and they were rolled under and had been welded in several different spots. I actually didn't think they were going to turn out as good as they did on that end. You can see where I somewhat stitch welded this one back together. I did come through and open it up a little bit and drilled a hole at the end of it. But I'm not going for perfect on the running boards. Right here, one of the braces on the bottom side was rusted out pretty bad, so it started rusting through the top. So what I did was I went back on the bottom side, cleaned it up pretty good, cut all that out, put a piece back in and re-braced it. And then all I did on the running boards was welded up the holes. If it burned through, it burned through, and I just kept welding until it wasn't burning through no more. Reason being, I don't think I'm gonna paint these, even if I do a nice paint job. I think I'm gonna run like a bed liner or a undercoating or something like that with a rougher texture on those. One, they're not gonna hold up well anyways, and two, With that, maybe if we are stepping on them or kids stepping on them or something like that, they won't be slick. They'll have a little bit of grip and tread to them. So I think that's what we're going to do with the steps. So I'm not going for perfect. You know, if there's a little bit of imperfections, a lot of that'll be filled with that truck bed coating. So I think they're good. There was a couple spots, a couple of the bolts were still in there and rusted up, and I got those knocked out and took care of. But they turned down okay. Like I said, I'm not going for perfect. We're just going for better. It is an old truck. So what I'm probably going to do now is I'm probably going to go ahead and get this fender just somewhat set on the truck and a couple bolts put in it to hold it up there, and I'm going to start getting the rear fenders off. They just got a couple self-tapping screws holding them in there for now. I'm going to get them pulled off, and we're going to start getting the front areas where the running boards mounted took care of. So let me get this fender put on, and we'll start getting the fenders off the back. All right, guys, so I've gotten all the metal work on the fenders and running boards took care of for the most part. There's just a few odds and ends to go back and touch up, mostly maybe a few pinholes and a little bit of grinding left to do. But I went ahead and got everything put on the truck for the most part. That way we can somewhat see, you know, if the fenders are in line or if they need to be moved. I went blank. I'll show you. All right, so I went ahead and put everything on it. I went ahead and put the doors on it also. And I went ahead and cleaned it up pretty good, gave it a little bath. It was the first one I'd gave it, but I figured I'd clean it up. It had a lot of dust on it and spider webs all inside of it. But I'll walk you around and show you what we got done. The metal work turned out decent. It did. So what I did to mount those, where the factory holes were already, I just put some rivet nuts in and bolted it down that way. They're bolted down. The fenders are still held on with some self tappers for now. I didn't want to go in the steps of actually getting them mounted the way they need to be because I'm not sure that's where they need to be. I don't think it is. I did notice this fender almost needs to go forward, where I thought that fender on the driver's side needed to go back. This one's too far back. So I struggled to get the running board on because there's too far of a gap. So I've just got it it's not tightened up, but it's tightened up enough to hold it and it not, you know, shake around. I'm trying to think. Oh, and I'll show you a mistake that I made. It sucks, but it happens, and I'm not going to hide my mistakes. I'm a person like everybody else, and we all make mistakes. So when I was doing the cab corners in the previous video, the cowl corners, I had went by the fender arch, the curvature on the fender, and for some reason, I don't know if it was just with the fenders being beat up and bowed, but my gap is wrong, and so is the gap for the door. There's quite a bit of a gap there. So what I'm probably going to do in a future video is I'm probably going to come back in and fix that. I had thought about just ordering some replacement panels and cutting it out and just doing another video of using replacement panels, but I went through all the work to do it that way, and mistakes happen. So I'll probably just come back in, cut it loose, pull it out to where it needs to be, get my arch right and get everything right, and then weld it back in, fill what needs to be filled. So I hate that it happened. I'm quite disappointed about it, because I wanted to make sure I didn't have that issue, and that's why I went by the Fender. And I should have put the door on and checked, and I didn't. So we live and we learn. But I think it looks good cleaned up after it had a little bath. The rear fenders turned out okay. This one, I think it's still got some spots on the back side where it mounts that I need to go in and fix, but like I said, I wasn't worried about all that. I just wanted to, for the most part, get everything to the point to where it could be mounted on the truck. I've got to come back and do the braces for the running boards, so I'll make some braces that kick down off the frame and go up under and hold them. Yeah. The doors actually opened quite well beforehand, before I done the cowl corners. On the other frame, I had tried to adjust the doors beforehand, and every time I would get them adjusted, one would close fine, the other one wouldn't. I would get the one that wasn't closing fine adjusted, and the other one wouldn't. So I was fighting myself back and forth. I think a lot of that was where it was all rotted out. It just kept, the whole cab was flexing, so I was fighting myself. So that's why I wanted to go ahead and get those cowl corners took care of for the most part. That way it had the structural integrity that it needed to have. That bed is video on the bed's coming soon. I'm tired of hearing it rattle. So yeah, I'm not really sure what the next video will be about. I may go ahead and do the bed and the rear fenders. That was the purpose in doing the metal work, was so we could get the fenders figured out and get the bed mounted where it needed to go. So that'll probably be where we head on the next video. But I think I'm going to wrap this video up, and I appreciate everybody watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Thanks, everybody.